I'm good. If I get down there, I'll never get up.
We all know why we're here, to celebrate Bill Shively and offer some toasts, some words, some stories, whatever people want, and then we can get back to what we have been doing, celebrating Bill Shively and telling stories, and but just not in a big group, but in smaller groups. So, anybody want to go first?
Hey, Bill! Hey, Bill! It's not over till the poets stop talking. It's not over till the poets stop talking. It's not over till the poets stop talking, and we won't. Hey, Bill, we won't.
Bob?
Yeah, all right. So there's a road trip to Boise, and this poem.
Can everybody hear him okay?
No, I'll stand up.
All right.
I have to find this because I didn't know for sure the order of things. So
There is no order.
two things. No order. I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
And, well, before I do the road trip, I guess there's a photo over here, and there was one that we put up on Facebook with where I was reading something, and Shively's in the back with a microphone. He's kind of smirking. So I don't know whether this was the poem that caused him to smirk, because I'm in the photo. But I suspect it was, because I recall something like a, is there a noise for smirking? Someone's hitting heads, and the reverb of repetition sets in every other beat. Feet falling into it, backbeat. And the end, come up to the front. Never give a preacher, I say, never give a preacher a microphone. There's money in it. Money in the microphone. And absolute money corrupts. Absolutely, absolute money corrupts. There's money in it. Money in the microphone. Someone's hitting heads. Little cabbages of money. Got a worldwide microphone stick. Thwack! Thwack, thwack, thwack! Crapture! Thwack, 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 wacko. Sanctify, all shout at once, say, sanctify! The Pope of the pederasts. Everybody say, Saint Pederasto, protect us! Thwack, 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 crapture. I think it was the crapture line that caused him to smirk. So I'm going to do just one more, and this is one I wrote after I heard he passed. But it's like a rerun from my imagination that I called Moonmoth Improv. And it's a road trip to Boise. Moonmoth Improv for Bill Shively. Road trip to Boise. Cross the Snake, turn before Burley and Albion. Read to a sparse crowd in coffee shop. Retire to an after party in a home. Enter past a radiator. City feed hot from hot springs. A garden hose taps heat, runs outside through backyard doors to tarp tub in hole. Improvised. Steams in night. Overflows. Outlet to a mud bank meander. Candle lit. Jug of wine on a cord. Soon moon moths come. So large, I think. Birds. Slowly pass through steam. Soak on. Toke on. That's for me. I guess for me. I hung out with Shively mostly in like open mics, doing the setting up PA systems and trying to get things in the background working. So there's one side of him you think of as Shively, you know, the performer, but he was always kind of like doing something at Cup and Saucer, you know, finding a new venue, doing something someplace else, and not really taking much, you know, kind of public bragging rights on it. You know, it was just him kind of underneath it all.
And that's the thing, we would like to hear some little stories. It doesn't have to be a poem or anything, or just something more or less spontaneous. Stan. How about a story, Stan? What?
Yeah, I got a zillion great stories about Bill. Or what ones.
Well, there's family here, so you know.
Yeah. Well, just I met him actually through science stuff, because part of one of the hats he wore was he taught science out at St. Mary's Home for Boys. And I went out there on a science outreach deal, and he showed all of his kids all these weird extinct mammals and stuff, and we guessed at how they ate. And Bill had all these, he made these, just this amazing crack about a 19th century French naturalist, and I just went, let's talk. And so we just immediately became friends, and went on a field trip, and he brought me coffee and stuff and all this, and then push came to shove, and we were like moving. We had to move, and we didn't have a contingency weekend. It was like 100 degrees in the middle of July, and just everybody bugged out except Bill. And Bill, he didn't know us that well. He just came and worked like a stevedore, like in it till the end. Just truckload after truckload, and it was hot, and we were moving pianos and crap, and it was amazing. You know, from his art stuff, he brought poetry up to date for me, you know, because I didn't know anything, I didn't pay any attention to anything, you know, and just the urgency of bringing the modern vernacular of English into poetry, you know, and he just gave it this immediacy, and he gave it relevance, and like, he blew me away, man, with that stuff. Awesome. The king.
Yeah. Anybody in the back cluster there with something to say?
I brought something.
Okay. Come on down. And the wind crushes.
Well, we all went to the goat roast, and I thought that the goat deserved some recognition. This is ode to Shively's goat. You who would never stoop to eat a tin can, sinuous purification of fire, hoofed poet fodder. You wiggling, wagging weed whacker, simmered to perfection, permeate poetics from Portland to Seattle. Noble ruminant who chewed its way through 374 pages of Whitman's Leaves of Grass. Enjoyed cut of Ginsberg bleeding out howls, onomatopoeia. Ears full of the even more obscure Slocum poet, you belch Shively in Newburghian meadows. No goat of scape, you give your all to feed the guts of poets in metaphor and simile, bathed in sauce of adverbs and adjectives. No Billy or Nanny, call it delicious. In your illuminary of language, call it luscious, delectable, ambrosial, yummy. Remember the goat's last words, eat me.
Even if there are rocks in the road, doesn't mean you won't have a hell of a ride. All it takes is wind. No brake light, the huddle of street lamps and roundhouses. The defrost don't die, sinking to the bottom, running on the outside when the tank, switch the tank before it pegs E. Don't seem like much, but the map is folded right. Man, he says to me, death is just a way of saying the other team has scored. You've lost that home court advantage. Even if there's rocks in the road, You can get there from here. You can take it with you. You can find all of the people all of the time. You can judge a book by its cover, and you can make a Plymouth fly. Even if all you remember is one face, from cheekbones to chin, bar-like eyes, hair like some hidden glade where deer mate, and a neck to touch so much, so much. A drive to Venus would not be too far. A chance, one last chance to tie the score before the end of the game.
Yes, yes.
First time I saw Bill do his poem on entry thing, I was just, yeah, I want to steal that. And, got to do it for Bill. So, thanks. Someone?
Let me try this one.
Okay.
Let me see what I can do with this one. I love this poem. You guys be patient with me. These 3 green bottles bleeding into the black plastic corner like Dolly jewels. The clock has a gin and tonic hangover. Even the sparkle is dense, bruised and fibrous. It's 1/4 Tuesday. The mañana of dust so thick you could swim in it. You could write a ransom note in it. You could write long, short stories, novellas, where the main character is a woman trying to discover her identity in a changing world, a world leaving the ways of the Old West behind, where the only place for a cowgirl anymore is the rodeo, the beer commercial. The only place for a cowgirl anymore is the Concourse Italiana, with hundreds of sports cars, music lowing like drove-in steers. The journaling of valve and piston, horses and ponies and stampedes imagined, the Lamborghinis and hot tubs, those madrigada nights at the end of the trail. It is time to watch the movie Satellite as it slowly dials across the pregnant sky. You and the wolf peeing on the fence posts in each corner of the night. It's corn husking time. It is time for the 9th nervous breakdown. Mild, moderate, medium, not plain out, flat out, burnout, crazy, just paranoid exhaustion, clinical depression. It is 13 days to the end of next week, and whacking things to get them started doesn't hack it anymore, and you're sitting in between the mirror and the darkness searching for a way to get the house to buy around. It is time to remember how to take Japanese tea. It is time to brush your teeth. The real ones, the fake ones, the ones that aren't there. It's time to turn the compost. It is time to pay the speeding ticket. It is time to put air in the tires. It's time to pack for Alaska. It is time to pack for Jamaica. It is time to unpack from the farm. It is time to go on. It is time to paint the wall. The place where your friend has been beating her head, the friend without friends, the divorcee. Her hotel rooms and matchstick bridges. She sutures her harness, the place where your friend beats her head. Paint the wall. Listen to the cackling geese. They are not laughing at you. Listen to the geese. That's these 3 green.
As I knew him over the years. And what I'm going to read is one of the peculiar senses of
Oh, I hope it's the one I'm...
yeah. And I imagine it happening like the day or the night or a couple of days or nights after the Go Post. Slug drunk. I was buying. Like everything else they do, slugs drink very slowly. We drank all night. It was a clear night, just an onion skin of mist towards morn. It was a quiet night. The slugs don't really know how to have a good time. Remember, they're slugs. I didn't have to use chilled mugs either. They drank from the pie plates, cat food can, the lid of the cooler, and some of those styrofoam things you get under meat at the grocery. By sunrise, we'd set them up with 5.5 beers, 2 Blitz, a Pabst, my favorite, 2 Strohs, oh, my ex-favorite, and a half a Tecate I found on my desk. I would never have left a half a Tecate on the desk. We all got pretty toasted. There were 189 dead slugs by the end of the party. About a quarter ounce used to be the lethal limit. Some drank more, some less. But these are just statistics.
Rural life.
So I first met Bill, I can't remember, it was during Artquake, and we were doing a reading on the steps of the Gusso Solomon Courthouse. You know where that is downtown. And he taught me the power of the use of the prop. And he had this doll that was played with cymbals, and he wind it up and let it go, and it would go down the steps and fall down a couple steps, and he'd follow it around and read. And I was kind of astounded. And I'd say we did probably 20, 30 readings together, and he was always a couple steps ahead of me, figuring out those type of theatrics. So he also participated in an email group that still goes on with Mark Sargent and Bob and Dan that he contributed to. And I put a poem on there that he was kind of interested in, and he called me up. He said, "I can't believe you wrote a poem like that," which to me seemed like kind of a minor thing. And we said, "Got to get together." And where did we end up getting together? Oh yeah, we went to see the Reverb Brothers and over at Doug's White Eagle gig. But I just want to read this poem, and this was, I guess, originally dedicated to another friend of mine. It's now dedicated to Bill.
You're so fickle.
This is, what can I say? Dark sunset on the south coast. Endless rain, wind, and wave fill my ears with questions, pounding against the headland. Remembering old friends dead or ghosts lost in the surf, dreams driven by a storm. An empty wine glass slips out of my hand, shatters across the floor. As hearing fades, many new voices crowd around in the dusk. I can still hear it.
Yeah. So obviously, I know some people would plan to speak. If there's some people who didn't know and want to say something, you don't want to leave anybody out. Charles?
I'd like to mention, I want to read my favorite Shively poem, but I also want to mention a couple of people like Bill who are here in spirit, but not actually present. And one is, like Bill, a musician from Nashville named Clyde Watkins. They got together at the last poetry party and really hit it off. And Clyde mentioned him fondly many times to me. And also a poet that most of you know, Stephen Thomas, who's in Stuttgart, who can't be with us. And if you don't have this book, I think Trudy published it, Trudy Mercer.
There's a few spare copies here for people to have.
There was a weekend for children. I went to a temple for a special candle lighting they have every year. The temple's nearby, so it wasn't much trouble, except we weren't invited. But once we got inside, it was all right. There are 8,000 Buddhas here, little stone Buddhas, many of which don't resemble Buddhas so much as stones, and not a few of them are dressed for the party in these little aprons tied up around their necks, if you know what I mean. So I guess you call them bibs, because after all, these little stone Buddhas, and these guys are all over Japan. It just so happens that 8,000 of them are right down the street, and all these little stone Buddhas are for the kids, for the unborn kids particularly, and I think that's unborn as in didn't make it, rather than unborn as in on their way. And everybody who was invited, which was everybody less two, everybody had candles and knew what they were doing. And what they were doing was walking along these narrow paths among the big Buddhas and looking for a candlestick to stick their candle in. And I don't know if they were looking for a particular stone Buddha, ones they light candles at every year, or if they're just looking for one that strikes their fancy. But some of them are looking for a very long time. Remember, there are 8,000 to look at, and maybe some of them just don't see too well because it was coming up on the edge of dark about them, but they find what they need, and they light their candles and move off another candle and watch that it's caught, and then they move on, because there was quite a crush. And if you got over under the ginkgo trees, or got over by the little priest saying sutra, in his little priest saying sutra shrine, you got a nice look at all these candles glowing and all these stones smiling, and figured maybe the unborn babies would be doing okay.
Yes.
All right here.
See, Doug?
I'm enjoying it.
Okay. Well, let's see. I think one thing we wanted to have, and I know most people don't have drinks with them right now, but imagine you do. And let's have a toast to Bill Shively.
Dan, aren't you gonna tell us the story yourself?
No. I don't know too much, but, and I don't know how better to toast Bill, but in all the words that we've been hearing, a man of many cultures, a man of more talents than all of us together probably know about, so, to Bill.
Great interview. Cheers, Bill.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
One of the times that we visited, we were hanging out with Bill and Anna. My name's Christine, and he was performing on Division. And what was that little place called?
Eugenius.
What was it stand?
Eugenia.
Okay. Were you there?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Oh, I'm so saxophone?
No, I played guitar and bass.
Yeah, that's it.
Looks like a saxophone.
And you two started with "She drives a little Debbie snack truck."
Yeah,
I'm
that's right.
waiting for the rest. I can't remember. All I have
I
that all
can't
the
remember
time.
it either.
I just
Bill would
thought-
get these hooks going, and then he'd just wail on them, and then he'd lose them. I mean, he was like, "Stan, do you have that?" That's like, you know. So that's
It
right.
has been in my mind, and that was how long ago was that?
12 years.
Yeah, and I'm still walking
You
around
still
going,
wondering
"She
about the Debbie?"
drives a little." How
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah.
And so I think it's when Bill was in the hospital or he was at home, and I started singing, and he just looked at me. But he remembered it, but I think he probably wondered why of everything that I've produced and everything I've created, you would remember the Little Debbie snack truck. That is.
It's prolific, and a lot of the pieces were short-lived. You know, we just play them just a couple of times, and then onward we went. You know, and he could outpace me trying to write music for this stuff. You know, and I was like, Bill, we're just kind of still getting the bugs out of his back here musically. You know, he's ready to go. You know,
Does anybody remember, I don't want more of anything less, I just want more art for myself, I want more art.
Oh, yeah.
This was a whole song, this went on for 15 minutes. Yeah.
There's a lot.
Oh no, that was like mid-80s, early 80s.
Oh, are you gonna?
I have something.
Okay.
Well, I met Bill probably somewhere.
Oh, I'm sorry, were we finished with the snack truck? Okay.
I met Bill
We're starting to be
somewhere
hungry now, so we
in
can wrap
91
this
or
up.
92. Cafe Lena by Leanne Grable and Stephen Sanders used to have an open mic, and I moved to Portland. And I started looking for a place to live, and I went in there and I talked to Steve. I said, "Do you know any place around here?" He's like, "No, I don't." And I said, "Oh, that's too bad." And then 2 weeks later, I found an apartment where I lived for 12 years, 3 blocks away from Cafe Lena. And I had to paint the apartment, and I moved in on the 1st of August, and I didn't actually move to sleep there until almost the 30th of August. I had 3 parties for poets in that house before I had a bed in that home. Because I went to an open mic at Cafe Lena that very first week when I was painting, and I brought somebody home, and next week I brought more people back. I had 52 parties in 1 year, and I don't know where Bill fits in there, but he's part of that puzzle where I met all of these people at 23rd and Salmon. And I met a lot of people that year, and then that year ended, and it ended in August. My friend Eileen, who I met there, and she became my best friend like a sister, she lives on the East Coast now, and I called to tell her about Bill and see if she had anything, but she's busy with her family. And I was sitting there, I was thinking, I had a summer of loss. I watched a man die in the middle of Powell in front of my house this summer. I stood in the middle of the street in my pajamas, barefoot and braless, steering cars around this poor man while people tried to revive him. One of my best friends for 20 years committed suicide. And it's been a pretty intense year, and I was trying to think, how do I talk about this man who I've never forgotten his face or his eyes or his voice. And I only had a few words. I had to come up with something short, and it came up after I talked to Eileen. It's been a challenging summer. This is called Bonfire, Breakfast in the Field. The morning after, much joy, the heat of the sun on the skin of the tent, the hungover moment of the sound of bees on the petals of clover, the sweet smile of friend Eileen, the Italian cracking hard-boiled eggs and singing of bread buttered on both sides for my sister's birthday, the Leela's ruling the summer day, the Japanese aesthetic, the warm, understanding voice, the eyes that understood who you were, no matter if you knew yourself. This was a moment of Bill Shively.
Well, I knew Bill in Seattle in the 80s when Red Sky was getting together, and I was organizing the bumper shoot book fair and the readings after Tom Parsons left for Denver, and so I was always fond of Bill's work, and he was always full of surprises, and I just sort of picked this up. This kind of fell into my hands the other day, and I didn't realize that he had done some translations from Tibetan, and so I'm going to read those.
Who knew?
And this is in Joe Keppler's Poets, Painters, and Composers, which is a wonderful magazine of, you know, art and everything, kind of visual art and poetry and wonderful magazine. So let's see, I lost my page. So a little bit of introduction. He says that he was interested in the sixth Dalai Lama's poetry because he was, you know, more interested in sort of street people and, you know, drinking in the taverns and writing love poems. And so there's just 3 of these, and I'll start with the Tibetan, I guess. Chipe yige nanchung chudam tikpe shi song machi semki rimo sun kyang chukya mi du. Writings bleed black in the rain, while the image remains unerased, unwritten. Gompe lame share, yila chegu midu, magom champe share, yila yang yang sharchum. Meditating on my guru, I can't see his face, but my love, here, without even thinking. Norbu Ronglak Yodu, Norbu Nornyam Macho, Norbu Mila Shordu, Ninung Topa Song Chong. You own your own wealth. They own you. Let go. Let go. Let go. Let go.
last call for speakers or performers before we let go?
I wrote one myself instead of doing one of his.
Okay. Doug, are you gonna say something too?
Draw Doug out of the kitchen.
I'm really having a good time.
Okay.
Learning about skill in ways that I didn't know. It's just a marvelous thing.
I'd just like to, I allowed myself to get wrapped up in my own story, which I shouldn't have done when I was doing this. I should mention that the poem is based on, I don't know if it was a goat roast or it might have been a goat, I don't remember. Probably 20 years ago on the farm in Newburgh, and spending the night and waking up. And it was my friend Ellen's birthday, and Anne and Bill had put up this wonderful spread, and there was this gorgeous Italian man. He was handsome, sexy, and he found out it was my girlfriend's birthday, not just my friend, but, and he started singing to her in Italian about buttering her bread on both sides for her birthday. And it was a really, we had a lot of fun that night and woke up in the field in the morning. I just wanted to let everybody know that's what that moment was. that whole experience of being safe with people who are profoundly special somehow.
Well, I wrote this a couple weeks ago, and I feel really humbled reading something of my own when we're reading Bill's poems, which I really loved, who I regard as a better poet than me. Anyway, but this is kind of, it's really not very much about Bill in it, but it's really all about Bill. When it's been long enough. Reading a poem by Bill Shively in the afternoon ochre fart of a too warm October day through sheet walls, dense mumbles, the washer drones somewhere vague, and my flat still smells a little from when I cleaned the mushrooms I gathered. I cleaned the mushrooms I gathered, soaked and brushed debris off the aging bolitas I brought home from hushed needle-padded woods between overgrown sand dunes, and let them lie out on the counter to dry. Soap sponge bolitas, wet, take a long time to dry. Second or third day it was sort of working, and I saw first like sweet spring cherry blossoms, later like light autumn snow flurries, colors, orders of whitish lines wiggling, maggots emerging from the fungus, which, with stainless steel tweezers I had from somewhere I don't know, picked them off one by one, and with a spiteful little squeeze sent them into exile down the drain. For hours I'd check in, exterminate the recurring affliction. Then finally, tired of the game, sliced and seared and threw the mucus mushrooms into boiling gravy, zipped into plastic bags, and packed them deep into the freezer. This winter, I will have mushroom gravy, soup stock, side dish, I don't know, smoothies, when it's been long enough to forget. Reading a poem by Bill Shively, lately and long ago, my good friend. In my late and warm October room, a fly buzzes and returns, insistent as cancer. Open the blinds, wait for the beast to search for the sun beyond the glass, and then swat it with the chapbook. Flush it down the toilet, 1.5 gallons of water. One day we'll need so much. One day in the too warm future, we may all have to eat those flies, and we'll think them delicious when it's been time enough to forget. One day in the too warm and artless future, I'll be puzzled by a strange smudge on an ancient chapbook when it's been long enough to forget.
Okay. And thanks to Doug and Charity for the use of their fine made by establishment. You haven't seen all the rooms yet, but no one has, not even Doug.
Thank you, Dave. I know most of you had a lot more time with Bill than I did, and for all that, I had some great moments with him. And I think one of the things that y'all probably had a much better handle on, having known him so well, that I didn't early on, was that he had the notion of writing as vocation, and that really surprised me that the one night we really got into this, and this came out of his experiences with Sid Corman. And he told me this story, and I thought, wow, this... And I understood his communitarian instincts that night, and really what he was all about. He wasn't political about it, it was more like a community of love that he was always actively seeming engaged in. I really appreciated that in him, because people piss and moan about lack of community, but they don't go around knocking on doors trying to build it. And Bill was a guy who knocked on your door and said, come join. It wasn't just something that he felt was ready-made for you to step into. And I really love that about the guy. There are others in this room right now. Dan Raphael is one who has that same kind of commitment that really makes it a pleasure to live in the city and know you guys. It's really special. And Bill just amazed me with that. We had a long night of it, and we went far beyond those experiences, but it was just a side of him that I hadn't seen. Up to that point, he was just another guy who, like me, could inhale a six-pack in about 60 minutes. And that in and of itself would have been enough, but when I really got to know him.
Well, he was good after a six-pack.
Oh, yeah. It was really treated, it was special. I mean, I really understood early on one of those evenings that I was getting to know someone who just really had his own special way of being in the world, and it's not that common, really. So, thank you all for coming to our new house and helping us celebrate Bill's life, because it's definitely...
Thank you for having us.
All right, folks, so there's stories to tell in small groups. There will be no test afterwards. Or gathering of our ideas with big white papers and stuff. But again, please keep enjoying celebrating Bill and just celebrating our own lives at this moment.
Thank you, Dan.